Okay, we are here to talk about Westworld episode 8. We're really churning through this season. Trace Decay, and I'm here with Riley Chow this week. And Riley,
Hello.
let's start off by talking about the Critics' Choice Awards, which have come out, and Westworld has been nominated. Talk us through those nominations.
Yeah, so it got 3 nominations. It was nominated for Best Drama Series and Best Drama Lead Actress for Evan Rachel Wood and Best Supporting Actress for Tandy Newton. So what we saw there was no nominations for any of the men on the show. No Jeffrey Wright, whom they had actually nominated a few years ago for Boardwalk Empire, even though he didn't get a lot of awards for that role. And no Ed Harris, no Anthony Hopkins. So it might win Best Drama Series, but I feel like it has an uphill battle at this point with the lack of nominations for the men.
Yeah, it's interesting Anthony Hopkins gets snubbed. I think Jeffrey Wright's a good comparison. Like the Boardwalk Empire comparison's a good one because that was a big ensemble show with some other big names on the cast. So that was another sort of crowded sort of field that he was able to get nominated from them for. So what's it up against for Best Drama Series of the Critics' Choice, Riley? What are the other nominees?
Oh, I should pull up my list, but I think it's the usual Emmy suspects where you've got Game of Thrones, and then you also have a bunch of new shows like The Crown, and then there's Mr. Robot in there, and I don't know who else. I think who we need to watch out for though is Tandy Newton in Supporting Actress, because as we saw this week, she's just been knocking it out of the park week after week after week. I think at this point she actually has 5 episodes that she could legitimately submit at the Emmys as a tape, at least in Supporting Actress. We don't know if that's where she'll submit. But I mean, she had that the second episode where we first got to kind of meet her character, see her backstory, and then she had some more to do in the 4th episode. And then these last 3 episodes where she's been working with those 2 tech guys, she's just had so much material to play, and I don't see how she loses the Emmy at this point if she submits there, because the field is so open, and because even if the tapes aren't being judged on their own anymore, I think that she'll be able to ride enough buzz from her consistent work across the season.
Yeah, it's interesting with Danny Newton, and there's been talk about her going in the lead race for the Globes and things like that. So that might muddy the waters or muddle things up a bit if she gets in for lead at the Golden Globes where they submit her for the Emmys. But I agree that she's got a really good shot of winning the Emmy in that supporting race. For the Critics' Choice Award, she'll be competing against Christine Baranski from The Good Wife, Amelia Clarke and Lena Headey from Game of Thrones, Maura Tierney, The Affair, and Constance Zimmer from Unreal. So a lot of sort of critical favourites in that. The critics have always been a fan of The Good Wife, a couple of Game of Thrones people. Maura Tierney from The Affair, I think it's noteworthy. She's always getting critical citations, even though the show might not be. So that's I wouldn't rule her out of it. And Constance Zimmer, I think, is a real critic favorite, and I think a winner that really like to see at these awards. So I'd maybe give Zimmer the edge and put Newton in second to take out that award.
Yeah, she did win last year, so that never hurts.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Lost you for a second there.
No, yeah, that's fine.
With the category confusion, though, if she does win the Critics' Choice award, then I think that'll be enough continuity where even if she's nominated in lead at the Globes, and that'll give HBO an out to put her in supporting if they decide to do that.
Yeah. Let's talk a bit about the storylines this week on the show, Riley. And what do you think? We'll stick on Danny Newton, who had another strong episode, definitely not an Emmy tape or anything like that. But what do you think about this plan to recruit more robots to get out of the park?
I think it's fun. I really like how Tandy Newton's storyline is kind of going places, even if a lot of it is just her saying to the 2 guys, do this, and then they say no, and then she says, do it, and they say fine. But ultimately, she does end up in a different place than she started every episode. And there's suspense in her storyline, too. We never know is she going to get caught by somebody higher up? Is she going to, get her memory wiped? Because you even start to wonder, like, have similar things like this happened in the past in the park, and then it was just, the slate was wiped clean because they always have that power.
Yeah, exactly. So that's pretty interesting. She's starting to take a bit more control, take the bull by the horns, but it seems like people in the control room are sort of starting to figure that out, and it's gonna be interesting to see just how much she can actually do. Like, that's the thing with Danny Newton that I'm a bit just unsure as to how far she can take this.
Well, yeah, she's at 20 now, remember? And they said that before she was at a 14. And from what they said, it sounded like even humans aren't at, level 20. So
yeah,
she can do anything. And we don't even know how she became kind of aware of her own existence in the first place. She was getting stabbed 1 minute, and then the next minute she knew Felix's name when she was waking up, getting processed. And I don't know, who knows what she's capable of.
There's one actor this episode that I was really impressed by, and we've sort of for weeks been sort of saying, like, you're sort of like, oh, Danny Newton's been great this week. Evan Rachel Wood, she had a good episode. Last week it was like, boy, Jeffrey Wright, now he's got an episode, and we've been going, what's Ed Harris doing? We're enjoying his character, we're sort of liking his story, but he hasn't really had much of a showcase yet. And this episode, he had a big monologue, talking with James Marsden about why he started coming to the park. This was a good episode for Ed Harris, and I think puts him instead for that Emmy, on that Emmy track now. An awards track.
And what I love about the Man in Black storyline this week is that it tied into Tandy Newton's storyline. So it's actually he's not just off on his own journey; he's actually directly affecting other parts of the show. Because I feel like sometimes when you watch kind of big ensemble shows like this or Game of Thrones, everybody just gets kind of more spread out. You kind of wonder how things tie together thematically or on a plot level. And this one, even though they're all in the same park, that thing has kind of been happening over the last 8 episodes. But this puts him, squarely with the other characters and kind of demonstrates his importance. I do wonder if it's maybe a bit too late for Ed Harris, say at the Golden Globes, where kind of all season we've been thinking like, Ed Harris, this is going to be a big role for him, but he hasn't really done too much. He's just kind of been saying like, the maze, I got to find the maze. And then he does some walking, maybe he rides a horse here or there, pulls his knife out. But it's not like, Jeffrey Wright or Evan Rachel Wood, Tandy Newton, Anthony Hopkins, who are getting these big scenes every episode. Like here, Ed Harris finally gets his, but it's episode 8. So will voters get that far?
Yeah, like I do think though, like last year we saw Lady Gaga nominated for American Horror Story for like the Golden Globes. Like, and Ed Harris is a name that voters might just connect with. So I do feel like he's not out of the Globes race just because sometimes the Globes are a bit less focused on needing that episode, and sometimes they'll vote someone more on just their name. And like as little as he's had to do, he's been a very engaging character on the show. Like, you do often enjoy his scenes. Like, his scenes do sort of like, you go, oh, yeah, this is good. Like, so I think there's that. I think it's interesting, some of the fan theories and stuff that are out there that we don't need to get too into, but sort of how things could be on different timelines and things like that, and just where Ed Harris's storyline is taking place on the timeline. Is this, is he looking for the maze at the same time William and Dolores are looking for the maze, or are these two different sort of time zones and things like that, where it might be like decades later and stuff, because that will affect whether they end up meeting on this quest or not.
Yeah, and I wonder with these different times, I mean, the prevailing theory is that Dolores and William are 30 years in the past. But Dolores, yes, we know, is still a character in the present day. So where has she been all season? Like, has she just been doing her kind of loop as she presumably did every day in between? Yeah. I guess probably, but yeah, not the most exciting thing.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I think like one of the big things was the girl at the end that stabs Teddy was, I believe, the girl who welcomed William to the park.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she's also in Dolores' flashback when like the church is fully built, then she's also walking by in that scene.
Yeah, so this character is sort of suggesting this different time. Like, look, there's a chance, and I'm not saying this is what I think, but there's a chance, like, how long have the Man in Black and William and stuff been on their sort of, like, journey? Like, they may have just, like, the Ford's always out there, like, bringing in new characters, mixing people up, doing different things, like, does not necessarily mean that, like, 30 years has gone by from her being in that Welcome to Westworld sort of part of the park to the sort of outskirts sort of adventure sort of part. We do know that this new story of Dr. Ford's is very new. Like, it's sort of, he's adding this stuff with, I can't remember the villain's name that Teddy has a grudge against. Wyatt, yeah. The Wyatt stuff is a very new storyline, so maybe they're moving robots around and stuff for that.
How do you feel about the Wyatt storyline, Matt?
Not loving it.
I mean, it just kind of came out of nowhere a few episodes ago. They said Ford has this new storyline, and then suddenly, like, everybody's always talking about Wyatt.
Yeah, it hasn't, like, I don't think Wyatt's this big villain that I care about at all. Like, it's like, okay, cool. Like, you know, I really like last week, and I really like last week with Evan Rachel Wood and Williams sort of in the horse chases and stuff like that. So, like, as far as it provides, I'm not saying that was the Wyatt storyline, but if the Wyatt storyline can provide scenes that are exciting and good for the characters I care about, yeah, that's fine, but it's not really a storyline I'm invested in. Like, okay, so fine if it provides a hurdle for Teddy or the Man in Black sort of trying to find this maze, but it could easily be something else. It's not this storyline that I care about much. Yeah.
I did read this one theory about how, what if Dolores is Wyatt, which Wyatt's a guy's name for one thing, but maybe it's the last name, and it goes on to how Teddy in his flashback, he said that the whole town was wiped out or something, and then we actually see Dolores in a flashback, you know, killing everybody.
Yeah, I think it's much more likely that, like, William is the Man in Black 30 years earlier. That fan theory is true than this Dolores is Wyatt theory is true. Like, that, if one of those two theories is true, it'll be William is the Man in Black in 30 years, or 30 years earlier. But we'll see what happens there.
It is pretty suspicious, so we don't know the Man in Black's name, like, at all.
Yeah. Yeah. What if that is the big sort of end of season reveal, or that was meant to be a big reveal later? How do you feel as a creator that, like, it's almost like Jon Snow coming back to life in Game of Thrones, that it wasn't really that shocking when it happened because so many fans had theorized that would happen beforehand? Like, I was sort of like, oh yeah, I wonder what episode Jon Snow's going to come back to life this season. And that wasn't because I'd been spoilt or anything. It was because I'd heard so many theories about it the week after the episode aired, and to me it made sense that would happen. I wonder if the showrunners are like, oh, this is going to be like, when we reveal this big twist, everyone's going to be like, oh yeah, we guessed that.
Yeah, it's hard to tell because they put in, like, a lot of clues about that, so they clearly want people to be thinking about it. And then you have characters like Lawrence, who is clearly showing up, you know, in two places, seemingly at the same time, playing two different characters. So I feel like even if you're not engaging in the theories, you'd know that something was off.
And can I just say, I do not necessarily prescribe to this theory. I would not be surprised if it happened. I can see how things point to this theory. However, what I will say is I am a bit, like, skeptical that Dolores, per se, is a robot 30 years before, like, she does not seem like a 30 years old robot to me from the robots that Teddy and Thing are encountering.
Well, I thought they said that she was one of the first models, though.
Yeah, but they update them, right? Like, they improve them, and, like, you know, like, the first models or the original model, like, they said they didn't even have blood or things like that, that it was, like, just...
Okay.
mechanics. So I would imagine, and I could be wrong about this, that even though she's the original one, they've updated her like workings and stuff to be like the new ones. But
Yeah,
we'll see.
that's fair.
We'll see. I think one more thing to talk about is the big reveal from the week before. Bernard having to come to terms, and this episode was really less so about the big reveal and more just him having to come to terms with understanding that he's a robot, which I thought was a pretty good episode for Jeffrey Wright, and sort of some ground that I guess we've seen a bit with Danny Newton, but in a very different way with Bernard, since he has such a relationship with Dr. Ford, the creator of the park.
Yeah, I'm so glad that Jeffrey Wright has a great role to play again. I mean, he does have an Emmy, a Golden Globe, etc., for his role on Angels in America, which was like 12 years ago. Since then, I feel like I've seen him most just in the Hunger Games franchise, where maybe he isn't being used, to the full extent of his abilities. But yeah, he gets a lot to play here, and yeah, I felt like it was over kind of fast, but I think we'll continue to see the ramifications of it. And then there's the head of security. He's kind of wondering what's going on over there. And also we had that quick flash where Bernard asks, like, have I ever done this for you before? And then when I watched it the first time, I just thought, oh, okay, there's some random woman that he killed at some point. But then I saw all over the internet that it was actually Elsie, who he had been talking to before. And then, I went back and rewatched the scene, and it actually is her. So do you think she's dead? Do you think that they'll bring her back somehow? Or
I don't know. Like, is she a robot? Is that, that's the story? Oh, Teresa you're talking about.
No, like how there's the other employee that Bernard was working with, and they're trying to uncover.
Yeah, her. Yeah, I think we'll see her again. I feel like they didn't I think we'll see her again would be my guess. Or there'll be some big reveal, like he'll open a cupboard and she's dead, or so, like her body's in it. But I think we haven't had the sort of what is Coda the right way? We haven't had the period on her storyline yet. There'll need to be some, whether we see her as a dead body or not. I think we're more likely to see her as a real person, and maybe assuming she's not a robot, maybe she's the person Bernard says, hey, I'm a robot. We need to do something.
I guess that is how it goes in television. Nobody's dead unless you actually see the body, and then it's been buried or cremated. That's
the big Walking Dead rule to television, and I think, or even 24, and plenty of shows. I think that's the rule. So if you haven't seen them dead, they're not dead. Great. Well, it's been fun chatting Westworld with you, Riley. It was good.
Great.
And if you want to follow the Westworld chats at Gold Derby, please go to our forums at goldderby.com, and you can be involved in the discussions and the chats and things like that. Also make your predictions for Entertainment Awards there. Thanks for watching, everyone.